If your organization won't even admit what its culture is, it is set up to fail. I'm Dr. Anna Kalsman. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, and I research the unwritten rules of work for people from low-income backgrounds. Communication styles absolutely vary by culture, and culture has so many layers, including international. I focus on class because there hasn't been a lot of research on that, and it's very important to me. But there are layers of culture. There's international, national, subgroups, local, and so many other identities that go into that. And that's part of why having one corporate culture that you're not transparent about is just a breeding ground for conflict, and that inhibits your productivity. So, for personal and professional reasons, this is just a bad idea. You, at the very least, as a leader, need to be transparent about what your culture is and not assume people know, because there's not just one way to be. And if you want to be as legendary as the leader you think you are when you listen to podcasts, you need to create a culture that embraces people instead of making them fit into a cog in a machine that is not universal. I remind leaders when I give keynotes and workshops that we are an international workforce. And it sounds silly because that should be obvious. But I think we forget that, especially in the US. We are notorious for thinking we run the world. But similar to how during COVID, when schools got shut down, teachers just got thrown into online with no real support or training on how to teach online. I think maybe that happened in business of when the internet happened and suddenly it was much more common, even expected to be global, that leaders didn't necessarily get culture training. And so I want to share a resource here that might be helpful. So this is the intercultural conflict style model. This is by Hammer. You can see it's been around for decades, but again, not open science. I learned about this in Mary Frances Winter's book. We don't talk about that at work, and it's a great book. Totally recommend it. And anything by Mary Frances Winter, she is a legend. But it talks about the 4 different conflict styles based on 2 constructs: how much emotion you're allowed to show and how direct you're allowed to be. And similar to what this commenter said, being direct but restraining emotion is more common among European styles. And in her book, she argues Euro-American and actual European. This is where in my work, I would say this varies by class, because in working class communities, you can show emotion. I haven't done work on the other 3 styles, but I'll just share what Mary Frances Winter says. She says the accommodation style of being indirect and emotionally restrained is more common among Asian cultures. Being emotionally expressive and indirect is more common among Middle Eastern. And the engagement style of emotionally expressive and direct is more common among Black and African or Black and Latin communities. So what we can gain from this is, one, acknowledging that there isn't just an inherent normal way to do conflict that everybody knows. So if you're a leader, addressing what is considered appropriate and talking to your team about how they handle conflict, this is a tool to have that conversation. So do y'all see yourself in this, or no? Is there something else missing?